Good morning, everybody. My name is Brendan Schubert. I'm the manager of external affairs for the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority. Welcome to our water treatment plant in this historic building. And I just wanted to kick off today's event by introducing our executive director, Jim Good.
Thank you, Brendan. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome. It's a great pleasure. I'm here this morning and to announce the award of 17 grants for green infrastructure projects throughout the city of Pittsburgh. PWSA has always been focused on providing the highest quality water at the lowest possible cost. But other than that, until a few years ago, green wasn't really a word that we used too much at the PWSA. But now it's a strong focus of our efforts. And we've developed a strategy to incorporate green infrastructure into our plans to reduce wet weather overflows that during a rainstorm back up into our streets and overflow into the rivers. Our approach to wet weather is multifaceted. We look at it from the top, so institutional changes that need to be made and programs that need to be implemented, but also, and more importantly, from the bottom up, where we work with members of the community to identify specific projects that can be put in throughout the city and help us reduce wet weather overflows, green infrastructure projects. And we have a great example of one right here we can look at through the window or later on. Right there as you enter the water treatment plant is a rain garden. And that's an example of what these projects will produce throughout the city. That little garden right there, which has only been in place since the fall, will collect all of the rain that comes from the asphalt around it for any typical storm that hits the Pittsburgh area. So it's a very effective and beautiful way to reduce wet weather overflows. Today is the first step in a project that highlights our partnership with the community to implement green infrastructure programs. We'll be awarding 17 grants to a variety of neighborhood and community groups to support their efforts to install green infrastructure. The recipients range from organizations you may have heard of, such as the Phipps Conservancy, to others that are less well known. But they all have one thing in common. They're working together with us as a community to invest our dollars wisely and strategically in implementing green infrastructure to reduce wet weather overflows. As Executive Director of the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority, I'm extremely proud that we're putting our money where our mouth is and we're able to support and fund these grants. Our authority has made $250,000 available to invest in green infrastructure projects, and that has leveraged another $750,000 for a total investment in green infrastructure projects of $1 million, projects that will double the amount of wet weather that can be held and prevented from flowing into the rivers or overflowing into basements. So for every $1 we've invested, we're leveraging another $3. This program will serve as a pilot to demonstrate how we can partner with community groups to build green infrastructure installations, and that'll serve as an example not only throughout the city of Pittsburgh, but throughout the region. Now to go into some more detail about our wet weather programs and our grant award, I'd like to introduce our sustainability manager, James Stitt. We'll have a number of speakers, and at the end we'll be able to answer questions, so if you'd hold those till everyone's had a chance to speak, we'd appreciate it. Thank you. James?
Thanks, Jim. Thank you all. Just for a little background on this, I want to talk a little bit about why we should care about stormwater in the first place to help sort of set the stage for why we embarked on a green infrastructure program such as this grant program and our green infrastructure program as a whole. The city and PWSA have been faced with this challenge of addressing these overflow issues of sewage entering into our rivers and streams during wet weather events for quite some time now. the stormwater enters our combined sewer system. It mixes with sanitary sewage that's already in that system. And then during heavier rainfall events, it actually overloads that system and flows into the rivers and streams as a release point. As little as a tenth of an inch of rain can cause an overflow in certain areas of the city, which results in impairments and water quality issues with our waterways and streams. This restricts the fishability and the number of days with which we can safely enjoy recreation on our rivers. It includes the Allegheny River, which is right out back here behind this building, which is where we draw our drinking water from. So we have to deal with that as well. In 2013, when we began restructuring our wet weather plan, we brought this issue to the community. It was something we weren't familiar with inside, so we thought we'd bring in some folks from the outside. We reached out to professors, researchers, architects, engineers, landscapers, and environmental nonprofits to help us figure out how to best approach a green infrastructure stormwater management policy. The result was our wet weather plan, which includes a dedicated section on green infrastructure, specifically trying to use a green first approach to stormwater management. And this plan emphasizes the most economical approach using this combination of green infrastructure, managing as much stormwater as we can through that aspect, then going to the gray and maybe some hybrid projects to alleviate some of the cost of gray by using green. The green infrastructure mimics natural systems. It's an ecologically engineered system. It's not just a garden with pretty plants like we see out there. There's engineering that's involved with the soils and the biology and the way that these things treat the water and improve water quality, as well as hold and detain some of the water quantity from getting into the system. Other benefits of these projects, there's beautification, there's water quality benefits, there's improved air quality, and it also helps reduce heat island effect in the summertime and when they're used in urban areas. And we've also seen many areas where economic stimulation has been grown and built up around these green spaces that are being used for stormwater management. So far, our green infrastructure program has and projects have reduced stormwater runoff by about 3.7 million gallons for a typical year. We expect that these projects, as Jim mentioned, once these grant projects are completed, are going to add about another 3.5 to 4 million gallons to that capacity. So every little bit as we move along, we're getting more and more water out of the system, which helps our overall reduction in overflows into the rivers. This grant program is part of our Green First plan, which is approaching stormwater management in a very different way than has traditionally been done. What we're doing here is we're sort of shifting the paradigm of traditional methods of stormwater management. It used to be stormwater's bad, build a big pipe, get it away from my site or my property as quickly as possible. Well, as I've talked with Grant on several occasions, we learned several decades ago that there is no place as away, with trash and recycling. This was clearly evident. And now we're learning it with stormwater management. When we put it in a pipe and take it away, it doesn't go away, it goes somewhere else and somebody else has to deal with it. So what we're looking for is a way to approach this as a source control and manage that water on site. And not just manage it, but treat stormwater as an asset to the property and to the site. As you can see with some of these plans here for some of these projects, these are going to greatly enhance these projects and these buildings that otherwise would not have probably happened without a green infrastructure background and support for it. So we want to make green infrastructure and stormwater management and looking at this stuff more of an asset than a liability to the property owners. So with that, to talk a little bit more about these projects and the program itself, I'll turn it over to Catherine Camp, and she can explain to you how this all came about and how it works. Thank you. Catherine is our Green Infrastructure Program Manager at PWSA.
Thanks, James. So this grant program grew out of PWSA's commitment to partnering with the community to address wet weather issues. And we wanted to find a way to raise awareness of what communities and property owners can do to manage stormwater while also getting more green infrastructure projects in the ground. So we worked with our Green Infrastructure Technical Advisory Committee, which is a group of local experts from various fields who work with us to advise us on green infrastructure policy. And we decided that a grant program would be an effective way to build partnerships with community members who are already excited about doing something to manage stormwater and encourage more people to learn about green infrastructure technologies. So we were very pleased with the response. We had 38 applications, and I'd like to thank our review committee, which included members of PWSA's engineering staff as well as members of our advisory committee who took the time to read all of the applications. So out of those applications, we're awarding 7 matching grants. Those are ranging from $8,000 to $40,000, and that represents anywhere between 8% and 50% of the investment in green infrastructure that those projects are taking on. We're also awarding 10 mini grants of up to $5,000 each. And those are for nonprofits and community groups doing projects that will raise awareness of the value of green infrastructure, while the matching grants are more significant stormwater management projects. As you heard, our investment of $250,000 will end up with a total investment of over $1 million in green infrastructure, thanks to the matching component. And we estimate that altogether, these projects will end up capturing or managing over 3.5 million gallons of stormwater in a typical year, and that's a lot of rain, and that's a significant step towards meeting our water quality goals. So we have 2 of our awardees here today. First, we'll hear from Stan Holbrook of the Larimer Consensus Group. So he'll tell us about the mini grant project that they've been working on in Larimer. And then we'll hear from Joel Perkovich of Sua Studios, who's been involved with a matching grant project in Uptown. And then finally, we'll hear from Grant Irvin, the Chief Resilience Officer for Mayor Peduto. Thanks.
Thank you. I'd first like to thank PWSA for having the foresight to begin this program. It's very important that we move forward in a way that is sustainable within our development and sustainable also for our communities. So talking about the mini grant, the Larimer Consensus Group is a community group that has been involved in planning for many years, and they developed the Larimer Vision to Action Plan. And with Kingsley as a major partner, we looked at, in 2014, the Hines Endowment granted money so a long-term rainwater reuse and stormwater management strategy can be developed. And we looked at doing demonstration projects from rain barrels and giving education to move that along. Since then, Living Waters of Larimer has been very intricate and involved in the development. But out of that initial project, we looked to utilize community residents. So we looked to try to develop a best practice urban placemaking strategy where engagement is going on, where there's education that move the residents forward in this type of endeavor. So we hired some people from the community and went out with the rain barrel management and subsidized rain barrels. From that project, we had many people that got rain barrels, but we had a few that really took hold of this rainwater management concept. So this mini grant is a continuation because water is very integral to the whole development, and it's connected to many pieces of the Larimer Vision to Action Plan. So we had found a person that embodies rainwater management, but she portrays it in such a manner where residents can actually hear and understand. So this project is a community education project that will subsidize rain barrels and rain gardens But more importantly, we're going to use the power of storytelling to involve the residents to learn about rainwater management. And what I mean by storytelling is probably the most powerful piece of communication you can have to transfer knowledge. There's a personal edge to it, there's an emotional edge to it, and there's a cultural context edge to it. So to change behavior, I believe the emotional needs to come out in this story. And right now we're talking about changing behavior, because when you look at community-based green sustainable development, it's not only about the environmental resources and having what you need, but it's about supporting the human resource to which this future is realized in. So this program is looking at supporting the human resource and taking a person indigenous to the community, speaking about rainwater management with their own personal feelings, their own personal benefit, and moving that process out to develop more people to buy in this project. Yes, we have money to subsidize 5 rain barrels, and we have money for design and installation, and we're sure we'll meet that goal. The larger goal is the education of the community to prepare as a development continues. Because with this project here, Mayflower Street Water Project, there's passive housing. Water is integral, and we are focusing on Mayflower and adjacent streets, so all the homeowners would be educated enough and buy into this so we can move forward to a more sustainable future. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So I'm just really delighted to be here today on behalf of the organization Start Uptown. They're a wonderful group that's been working to attract talent and jobs and resources to the Uptown neighborhood. And the project that PWSA has really enabled us to take on behalf of Start Uptown is a vegetated roof and stormwater harvesting system that'll be atop one of their co-working facilities, which is at the historic Paramount Film Exchange building in Uptown. The roof is going to be a highly visible and accessible demonstration of how to provide source control of stormwater in a densely developed urban area, but also how to harvest it as a resource and use it to support native plant communities, pollinators, food production. So it's really going to be a really potent example in a small space of how you can cleverly and sustainably use stormwater as an asset and also to provide high-quality green space. In just the 2,000 square foot roof area, we expect to manage at least 60,000 gallons of water on site, and that's, again, stormwater runoff that would otherwise enter the combined sewage system and contribute to sewage overflow. So we're very, very grateful to PWSA and its leadership for, I think having the foresight to implement this grant program. It certainly has enabled our project to happen, and otherwise it probably wouldn't have. I guess one more note I want to make is, we just feel that, green infrastructure and its role in the larger stormwater management and sewer management strategy in Pittsburgh really needs to be at the forefront of that planning effort. And PWSA has really shown, again, its leadership in that role. A lot of other major cities, across the United States and across the world really are using investments in green infrastructure to really, again, not only just improve water quality, but to provide civic improvements, attract young people, attract jobs, have that social, economic, and environmental impact. And we're really hopeful that green infrastructure becomes a critical piece of this region's stormwater and sewer management strategy moving forward. And another reason why we're really excited about this project is we're confident that it's going to inspire other similar projects in Uptown and throughout Pittsburgh. And Uptown's recent Eco-Innovation Planning District, Eco-Innovation Planning District designation is really exciting, and it's really looking at how to reinvest in that corridor between downtown and Oakland and make it as green and as welcoming and as vibrant as possible. And green space and green infrastructure really, we think, will play a critical role in that. So again, we're just really grateful to PWSA and also to the building owner, Alexander Denmarsh, who actually rescued is part of the effort to rescue the Paramount Film Exchange building from the wrecking ball just a few years ago, and now it's a really vibrant co-working facility. And the green roof and water harvesting system will be, sort of the icing on the cake for that project. And again, we hope it'll help catalyze other projects throughout Uptown. So, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Grant Irvin. I serve as the Chief Resilience Officer for the City of Pittsburgh and the Office of Mayor William Peduto. I'd really like to thank the leadership of Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority as well as the community leadership today on behalf of the Mayor, because this is really a great example of the co-benefits that can be created with leading with thinking about water first. You know, water is probably one of, if not the most critical asset to life. So when you combine the challenges that we have with Pittsburgh and the opportunities that we have within our neighborhoods, and thinking about water first really creates a critical first step forward. And what you see today is kind of the leverage that we're able to make from the policy side to the practice. You know, a lot of our work in City Hall and working with PWSA over the first 18 months or so of the Mayor's administration has been about developing a policy environment in which we can change this paradigm to put water at the forefront of the growth and redevelopment of our city. And changing that paradigm is not easy, but using assets like the community-based projects that we see here today and the critical investments that the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority is making and the leverage that they're creating is really about the practice, about demonstrating how we can change that paradigm of green infrastructure being the leading edge in terms of sustainable and resilient development in the city. As some of the previous speakers had mentioned, you know, other cities are out in front in terms of the policy and the practice of using green infrastructure, whether it's, you know, cities in Northern Europe like Rotterdam or just across the state in Philadelphia or a little bit south of us in Washington, D.C. You know, we see the opportunity as the city to be really not just learn from them, but to leapfrog them. And this is a great example of how we can demonstrate our leadership from the community to City Hall to our authorities and really change that paradigm. So I'd like to thank Jim and his team for pulling together this event and to demonstrating how Pittsburgh can really be at the forefront of the innovation in green infrastructure and the rebirth of some of our neighborhoods. It's really interesting too to look at some of the projects in Larimer and the Uptown programs that you've seen. It's also about how we all work together, right? You know, the abilities of neighborhood leaders to develop a vision and city and you know, authority resources coming together to help lift those visions up. The Larimer neighborhood and Uptown are shining examples really in terms of how Pittsburgh can put itself on the map, and people will be telling our story very soon as we see these projects be implemented. So once again, on behalf of the Mayor, I'd like to thank you very much, and Jim, turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Grant, and thank you to all of our presenters today.